The little girl lay curled up on the bed, her tears soaking the pillow, trembling as she begged her stepmother in despair, "Please don't scold me anymore." But at that very moment, the door burst open, and the millionaire father suddenly appeared. Before we begin, please leave a comment about this story and give us a score from 1 to 10. Are you doing okay? If there is something you'd like to share, I am always here to listen. I hope you find a moment of reflection as you follow this healing story, along with its journey of courage and justice. The Mendoza mansion stood on a quiet street in the Connecticut suburbs. Outside, the polished glass windows reflected the afternoon sunlight. The neatly trimmed lawn stretched out, and each climbing rose still held drops of dew. But inside that house, the silence was not peace. It was a cold, heavy quiet. In a small room on the second floor, Ashley sat with her legs drawn up on the bed, her smooth brown hair falling over her thin shoulders. The 6-year-old girl, with a bright face and deep blue eyes, clutched an old teddy bear named Buddy. The brown bear, its left ear frayed, was the last gift her mother had left before she died. Ashley's mother, Claire, had died more than a year ago from a stroke right inside this very house. That morning, Ashley could still remember clearly. Her mother was at the piano, playing and smiling at her. By the afternoon, when the sunlight tilted through the window, her mother clutched her chest and fell. Everything happened so fast that Ashley didn't understand what was going on before she saw the whole house thrown into chaos. From then on, in Ashley's mind there was always the image of her mother's gentle smile, her warm hand placing Buddy into Ashley's arms, whispering, "Whenever you feel scared, hold Buddy. He will stay with you instead of me." Since that day, Ashley had become much quieter. She would usually sit in a corner, holding Buddy and softly singing the melodies her mother had taught her. Her small voice trembled but stayed clear, as if she were trying to keep hold of a piece of her mother's warmth. This afternoon was no different. Ashley sat singing, eyes closed, imagining her mother still somewhere in the room, smiling and listening. But she had only sung a few lines when the door swung open. Lisa stepped in. The 36-year-old woman had a slender figure, a red dress clinging to her body, and golden hair brushed to a shine. Her high heels struck the wooden floor with a dry, sharp sound. Her eyes fixed on Ashley, cold and full of irritation. "Are you singing again?" Lisa's voice rang out harshly, as if cracking the air of the room. She strode over, snatched the sheet music from Ashley's hands, and tore off a corner. "How many times have I told you no singing in this house?" Ashley flinched, her small hands trembling as she hugged Buddy tight against her chest. Her little lips moved, a timid voice on the edge of tears. I just wanted to sing for Dad." That single sentence made Lisa's face tighten. A flicker of bitterness flashed in her eyes. As a young girl, Lisa had dreamed of singing. She used to stand in front of the mirror, holding a comb as a microphone, imagining herself shining under stage lights. But her father crushed that dream with cold words. "Singing won't feed you. Study something else." Lisa buried her dream, smothered her passion, and now here she was, watching a child accidentally live out what she had once longed for. And worse, that child was the living image of the woman Charles had loved with all his heart, Claire. Lisa clenched the sheet music in her hand, her voice coming out through gritted teeth. "Enough, Ashley. I don't want to hear another sound from you. Remember this. In this house there is no place for your singing." The door opened again. Marta, the middle-aged housekeeper, came in. She was heavy-set, her face lined with wrinkles, always looking for ways to please Lisa to keep her job in the mansion. Seeing the torn sheet music, Marta gave a thin smile and said in a shrill tone, "The mistress is right. This girl is always causing trouble. Just the other day she spilled milk all over the floor and I had to clean it up until I was exhausted." Ashley lowered her head, her small shoulders trembling. She didn't answer, knowing no one would believe her anyway. Her tiny hands gripped Buddy even tighter, trying to find a bit of comfort in his worn fur. In her mind, a distant memory echoed, her mother sitting beside her, holding her and whispering, "Your voice is like an angel's, Ashley. Never stop singing, my dear." Tears fell, soaking into Buddy's fur. Ashley bent down to pick up the torn sheet music, hugging it together with Buddy, as if clinging to the last 2 pieces of love she had left. Lisa turned away, her face cold, not a trace of softness showing. Marta trailed after her, still muttering words of complaint. The door slammed shut, leaving Ashley alone in the large room. The afternoon light still streamed in, but to Ashley, the room seemed dark. She squeezed Buddy tight and whispered to the bear, as if her mother could still hear, "One day, Dad will hear me sing." Ashley sat still on the edge of the bed after the door slammed shut. She rubbed her swollen red eyes, hugged Buddy tight, and tried to keep the sobs from escaping. The room was so silent she could hear the ticking of the clock. After a moment, she drew a shaky breath, forced herself to stand, wiped her tears with her sleeve, and whispered to herself that she had to go downstairs to help clear the table, or her stepmother would get even angrier. She stepped out of the room, her small feet barely touching the wooden floor, moving cautiously as if afraid of making any sound. Downstairs, the large dining room was already set with food. Marta was polishing glasses, and Lisa sat at the end of the table, her eyes sharp and impatient, as if waiting for the slightest mistake to explode. Ashley trembled as she carried a tray of orange juice. Her tiny hands were slick with sweat, and her steps unsteady. Just as she set it down, a glass slipped from her grasp and shattered on the tile floor. Lisa sprang to her feet, the chair screeching back. Her voice cracked like a whip. "You're useless. You can't even hold a glass of juice properly." Ashley flinched and dropped to her knees, hastily gathering the shards with trembling fingers, murmuring under her breath, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I'll clean it up right away." Marta came over, one hand on her hip, her shrill voice piling on. "I told you so. This girl only makes more trouble. She can't do anything right." Ashley's sobs grew louder, her face streaked with tears. She wiped at the spreading orange juice on the floor, her small hands scratched by the broken glass. Lisa came closer, crouched down, grabbed Ashley's hair, and yanked her head back. Her eyes burned with hatred, her words hissing through clenched teeth. "You think I'll let you live a comfortable life in this house forever? You're wrong, Ashley. One day, you'll have nothing left." Ashley winced, but could only tremble, clutching Buddy with her free hand and pleading through hiccuping breaths. "Please don't be mad, I'll try harder. I promise." Seeing the child clutch the worn stuffed bear made Lisa's jealousy flare even hotter. She saw in Ashley the shadow of Claire, the woman who had died, yet still seemed to haunt every corner of the house, the woman Charles had never forgotten. And now, this very child continued to steal his attention. Just then, a knock came at the door. A tall, slender man in his late 30s stepped in, impeccably dressed, a smirk playing on his lips. It was Victor, Lisa's cousin, long used to freeloading and surviving through scheming and flattery. He held a small gift bag, his tone teasing. "Cousin, I came by to visit. Brought some good liquor. Figured I'd see how things are going here." Lisa released Ashley's hair and tried to compose herself. She glanced at Victor and forced a smile. "You came at the right time. This house is never peaceful with this girl around." Victor's eyes glinted with mockery as he looked at Ashley. "Oh, still the little one causing you grief. Poor thing, having to raise a child who brings no benefit at all. I'm telling you, Lisa, if you want to secure your place in this house, you have to be tougher. Otherwise, one day, she'll take everything for herself." Ashley's heart tightened at his words. She didn't fully understand, but she knew Victor saw her as a burden. She backed toward the wall, hugging Buddy tighter, tears blurring her vision. Victor set the gift bag on the table, leaned toward Lisa, and lowered his voice just enough for Ashley to still hear. "Charles trusts you, but men change quickly. You need to hold on to your power here. That girl, she's just an obstacle." Lisa stayed silent. In her mind flashed the image of Ashley clutching Buddy, her innocent eyes filled with fear. Bitterness rose again, jealousy of Claire fanning the flames. Ashley ran upstairs, her heart pounding, her breath uneven. She climbed onto the bed, pulled the blanket over her head, and shook. Her small body couldn't handle the pressure. She was so frightened she wet herself, soaking the bedsheet. Her white dress clung damply, and panic rose higher. She could only hold Buddy tightly and sob into his fur. "Buddy, I'm sorry. Please don't let them yell at me anymore." The laughter and chatter from downstairs faded. The room was filled only with stifled sobs. Ashley squeezed her eyes shut, wishing someone would appear to pull her out of her fear. Right then, the sound of an engine rumbled outside the gate. Tires rolled over the stone path. The main door swung open. Charles was home. The 41-year-old man was tall, his hair slightly tousled from the long trip. His face looked drawn, but his eyes brightened as he stepped inside, holding a bouquet of red roses and a brand new brown teddy bear. He wanted to surprise his daughter, to see her smile after so many days apart. "Lisa? Ashley?" Charles called out, but only silence answered. He went upstairs and opened Ashley's door. The sight before him froze him in place. Ashley lay curled up on the bed, her white dress soaked, her small shoulders shaking. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she clutched Buddy and choked out sobs. "Please don't yell at me anymore, I'm so scared." In that moment, Charles felt the ground drop from beneath his feet. The bouquet fell from his hand, rose petals scattering across the wooden floor. The new teddy bear tumbled, rolling to the foot of the bed. His eyes reddened, his breath heavy, his fist clenching tight. The whole house fell into silence, broken only by Ashley's muffled crying. Charles still stood frozen at the doorway, his breathing heavy and uneven. The image of his little girl curled up on the bed, her dress soaked through, her face streaked with tears, burned itself into his eyes. His chest tightened, a surge of anger searing every vein. He turned sharply and strode into the hallway. The sound of his shoes striking the wooden floor echoed through the entire house. "Lisa, get up here right now!" His voice rang out, each word clipped and hard. In less than a minute, the hurried click of heels filled the staircase. Lisa appeared at the landing, her red dress trembling slightly with each step. She caught sight of Charles, startled for a moment, then her face softened into a strained smile. "When did you get back?" Lisa tried to keep her tone even, though her throat was dry. I was only teaching the girl a little lesson, nothing serious." Charles pointed toward Ashley's room, his eyes blazing red. His voice came out hoarse, almost a growl. "Teaching? You call that teaching her, Lisa?" Ashley clutched Buddy tightly and looked up at her father, her small voice trembling. "Daddy, I'm so scared." That tiny plea ripped straight through Charles's heart. He turned to Lisa, his eyes cold, a mixture of fury and pain. Lisa stepped back half a pace, her lips trembling. She opened her mouth to speak, but at that moment Marta, having heard the commotion from the kitchen, rushed upstairs. She was in her 40s, stocky, her apron still damp from dishwater. As soon as she entered, Marta chirped in a high voice, "Sir, the girl makes things up all the time. Madam just wants her to behave better, that's all." Charles spun toward her, his gaze like a blade of ice. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low register, each word freezing the air. "Be quiet. I know exactly what you've been doing while I was gone. I've heard enough." Marta went pale, bowing her head, her hands twisting together. She stammered, "Sir, I only did what Madam told me." Charles's voice sharpened. "Did what she told you, or flattered her to keep your place in this house?" "Don't think, I don't know." The air turned thick. Ashley trembled, burrowing deeper into Buddy's fur, her frightened eyes darting between her father and stepmother. Charles turned back to Lisa. His voice dropped, but the fury still pulsed beneath it. "I go away on business, work myself to exhaustion to build a future for this family. And when I return, what do I find? My daughter treated like a stranger, living in fear, begging her stepmother not to scold her. Do you think I can accept that?" Lisa's fingers dug into her own palm until they drew blood. She shot back, her voice high, part rage, part despair. "You always defend her. Have you ever thought about me? I gave up my youth to follow you. I walked into this house and endured Claire's shadow every single day. Do you know what people call me? They say I'm just a replacement, a wife who came after. You've never truly seen me as your wife, you only see her image in that girl." Hearing her mother's name, Ashley's eyes widened as tears poured down. She hugged Buddy tighter and whispered through her pain, "Mom, I miss you." Charles froze. He closed his eyes for a few seconds, then opened them, his gaze steady, his voice low but clear on every word. "What shadow, Lisa? You're wrong. You've made yourself a stranger. I never forced you into this. And Ashley, she's just a child. She lost her mother, She needs love and protection. She is not the place for you to pour out your jealousy and bitterness." Lisa choked up. Tears welled, but she quickly turned away, unwilling to let Charles see. She hated the bitter truth that blind jealousy still lurked in her heart. Marta edged backward, trying to escape Charles's burning stare. Charles stepped into the room and knelt beside Ashley's bed. His rough but warm hands rested gently on his daughter's shoulders. His voice cracked, trembling. "My girl, I'm sorry. I left you to endure all this alone for too long. From today on, I won't let anyone hurt you ever again." Ashley sobbed, pressing her face into her father's shoulder, her words broken. "Daddy, don't go away anymore. I just want to be with you." Charles held her tighter. He felt her trembling breath merge with his heartbeat, one rhythm pulsing with pain and resolve. He looked up, meeting Lisa's frozen stare in the doorway. His eyes were no longer those of a husband, but of a father, ready to protect his child with everything he had. Silence filled the room. Only Ashley's sobs echoed. Marta slipped quietly away, leaving Lisa standing motionless. Her face was pale, her hands clenched, her eyes swirling with anger, resentment, and a fleeting hint of regret. Charles pressed a gentle kiss to Ashley's hair, his heart etching a vow. "No matter what happens, I will never let you cry again." That night, Charles hardly slept. He sat beside his daughter's bed, silently watching Ashley drift in and out of fearful sleep. From time to time, the little girl buried her face against Buddy, murmuring as if calling for her mother. Every sound was like a blade slicing into the father's heart. Charles clenched his hand tightly, vowing that from now on, nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning, the atmosphere inside the mansion was so heavy that everyone could feel it. The servants' footsteps were quiet. No one dared drop a spoon or make a loud noise. Ashley sat silently next to her father, dark circles under her eyes, while Lisa appeared busy, trying to hide her unease beneath a thick layer of makeup. Marta rose early as usual, but her eyes darted about, avoiding Charles's gaze. While Lisa busied herself directing the servants to set the breakfast table, Charles left the living room and stepped into the hallway where a few maids were arranging fresh flowers. He stopped in front of Elena, the young Mexican woman who had been working there for only a few months. Elena was gentle and quiet, usually working silently, and Ashley seemed to like her. Charles lowered his voice so that no one else could hear. "Elena, I need you to tell me the truth. While I was away, how did Marta treat my daughter?" Elena started slightly, clutching the bouquet in her hands. She looked around, then bowed her head and whispered, "Sir, Mrs. Marta often threatened the little girl. She told her that if she cried or disobeyed, she would be locked out in the garden at night. One time I saw her call the child useless and throw away her toys. The girl was terrified but didn't dare tell anyone." Charles closed his eyes, drawing a deep breath to contain his anger. When he opened them, his gaze was as sharp as a blade. "Thank you, Elena. Just go about your work as usual. Leave the rest to me." Elena nodded, exhaling softly as though a weight had been lifted. When the clock struck 8, everyone gathered in the dining room. The long table was covered with a white cloth, the breakfast set out in full, but the silence was so deep that the clink of a spoon on a plate could be heard clearly. Lisa sat at the head of the table, her face striving for calm. Marta stood behind her chair, hands clasped in front of her stomach, but her eyes betrayed her anxiety. Ashley sat next to Charles, holding Buddy on her lap, her small hands constantly stroking the dog's worn fur. Charles slowly sipped his coffee, set down the cup, then suddenly spoke, his voice striking Marta like a blow. "Who gave you permission to call my daughter useless?" The room froze. Ashley's head snapped up, her eyes wide, her heart pounding. Lisa frowned and turned to Marta. Marta paled, bowing quickly. "Sir, I never said that. You misunderstood." Charles slammed his hand down on the table with a sharp crack. He rose to his feet, pointing straight at Marta, his voice like thunder. "You dare deny it? I've heard enough. You threatened, lied, and turned a 6-year-old into someone living in fear right here in her own home. This is not a place for you to humiliate my daughter." Ashley flinched, but her eyes lit up for the first time. She saw her father protect her, strong and decisive. Marta trembled, hastily dropping to her knees, tears streaming. "Please, Mr. Charles, I only followed the mistress's orders. I meant no harm," Lisa startled, jumping to her feet. "Charles, I think you're going too far. Marta has worked here for many years, loyal to the family. She may be quick-tempered, but that doesn't mean you have to throw her out like this." Charles turned to Lisa, his eyes blazing with fury. "You still want to defend her? Do you remember how the girl cried last night? Marta is just a shadow following you, helping you do what you do. You think I haven't noticed?" Lisa choked, her face draining of color. She opened her mouth to reply, but her throat tightened. Charles turned back to Marta, his voice icy. "I don't need to hear another word. Pack your things and leave my house immediately." Marta lifted her head, panicked. "Sir, please give me a chance." I didn't know." Charles cut her off, his tone firm. "Get out of here before I call the police." With no way out, Marta bent low, tears spilling, then quietly backed out of the room. The door closed, leaving a heavy silence behind. Ashley sat still, her small heart still trembling, but a spark of light flickered in her eyes. For the first time, she felt her father openly defend her in front of everyone. She hugged Buddy tighter, whispering softly so only she could hear, "Dad heard me." Charles sat down beside her, serving her a piece of bread, his voice gentle. "Eat, Ashley. You need to regain your strength." Ashley obediently opened her mouth, taking small bites. Her eyes turned to her father, trembling but filled with hope. Lisa sat across the table, silently watching. She saw Charles tenderly feed Ashley, her heart gripped as if by a fist. On one side was the suffocating jealousy, every look and every feeling of Charles directed at that child. On the other was the helplessness, as though the ground beneath her feet was crumbling. After breakfast, Charles took Ashley out to the garden for some fresh air. Lisa returned to her room and closed the door. She stood before the mirror, looking at her own reflection, her eyelashes trembling. Her hand clenched the glass so tightly that the veins on her wrist stood out. Her voice was hoarse, whispering like a curse. "If that girl keeps taking Charles's love, I will lose everything." In the morning, sunlight streamed through the car window. Charles kept his hands on the wheel, his face thoughtful, yet his eyes softened each time he glanced at his daughter. Ashley sat in the back seat, holding Buddy tightly. Her eyes were still tired but brighter than the day before. Her father's presence made her feel less afraid. At the elementary school gate, Charles bent down, brushed her hair gently, and whispered, "Sweetheart, just enjoy yourself with your friends. I'm right here. Don't worry about anything." Ashley nodded and stepped out. She looked back at her father, then slowly walked into the classroom. Inside, the atmosphere was livelier than usual. Miss Miller, about 35, slender with wavy brown hair and a gentle yet energetic voice, was enthusiastically introducing the upcoming summer talent show. "Everyone, we're about to have a school-wide performance. This is your chance to show your talents. Anyone who can dance, sing, or recite poetry can sign up," she said, her warm smile spreading across the room. Some students raised their hands, excitedly talking about their skills. In the midst of it all, Ashley sat quietly at the back of the room, absent-mindedly stroking Buddy on the desk. She had never thought she would dare sing in front of so many people, even though the desire burned inside her. Suddenly, Hannah, the blonde girl sitting next to her, tapped her shoulder. "Ashley, you should sing. I heard you the other day. Your voice is beautiful." Ashley startled and quickly shook her head, but a boy in the row ahead turned around and grinned. "That's right. You should sing. Everyone wants to hear you." The voices spread. Then the whole class chanted, "Sing, Ashley, sing." Ashley's face turned bright red. She looked around and saw everyone waiting. Miss Miller came over, bent down, and spoke softly. "You don't have to be scared, Ashley. Just try a short piece. I believe you can do it." Her heart pounded, but her late mother's words echoed in her mind. "Your voice is like an angel's, Ashley. Never stop singing." And the image of Charles from last night, holding her tightly and swearing to protect her at all costs, gave her courage. Ashley stood up, holding Buddy in her arms, and took a deep breath. Her hands trembled, but her eyes grew steadier. She began to sing. A clear, pure sound floated out, gentle as a breeze, but so deep that every other noise vanished. The whole class fell silent. Each note seemed to touch their hearts. When Ashley finished, a brief stillness passed before the room erupted in applause. Miss Miller, visibly moved, clapped louder than anyone. "Wonderful, Ashley. You have an angel's voice. I want you to perform at the talent show. The whole school will be proud." Ashley blushed, bowed her head, but her lips curved into a small smile. She had never felt this happy before. The good news spread quickly. That afternoon, while picking up her child, a passing parent spoke to Lisa, who had come to the school with Charles. "Your husband's daughter sings beautifully. Such rare talent, I got goosebumps listening." Lisa froze for a moment. Her face stiffened, a forced smile appearing on her lips, but inside her, a wave of jealousy exploded. Those compliments echoed like blades twisting in her mind. On the way home, Lisa stayed silent, her hand gripping her purse until her knuckles turned white. Memories of her youth resurfaced. Back then, little Lisa used to stand in front of the mirror, holding a comb like a microphone, humming her favorite song. She once believed she would stand on stage, shining under the lights. But that dream had been crushed harshly by her father. "Singing won't put food on the table. Stop wasting time on nonsense," his voice had thundered like a hammer. Lisa cried herself out, snapped her pen in anger, and tore up the pages where she had written lyrics. From that day on, she buried her singing dream, leaving only a painful scar in her heart. Now, watching Ashley sing and receive praise, that scar felt torn open. She saw herself in Ashley, but also her own humiliating defeat. In her eyes, Ashley was no longer just a child, but someone stealing what she had once yearned for. That night, Ashley happily returned to her room. She opened her music notebook and sang softly to Buddy, imagining the day she would perform on a real stage. But the door swung open. Lisa stood there, her face dark, her eyes like a storm. "What do you think you're doing?" Her voice cut like ice. Ashley startled, clutching Buddy, and stammered, I'm just singing to Buddy." Lisa stepped forward, snatched the notebook from her hands, her voice sharp as a knife. "From now on, you're not allowed to sing in front of anyone. If you dare again, don't blame me for locking you in the dark room." Ashley panicked, tears streaming down her cheeks. She hugged Buddy and sobbed. "But I just want to sing for Dad." Those words choked Lisa. For a moment, she glimpsed Claire, the woman who had passed away but still lingered in this house. But instead of softening, her heart twisted tighter, turning into burning resentment. Lisa turned her back, walked quickly out, gripping the notebook tightly. Standing in the dark hallway, she whispered through clenched teeth, "No, I won't let her surpass me." That evening, the elementary school auditorium was packed. Bright lights shone down on the stage, the red curtains drawn aside to reveal a small orchestra behind them. A large banner hung on the wall with the words, "Welcome summer, shine your dreams." Parents filled every seat. Children chattered and laughed, the sound of shoes and chairs scraping blending into a lively, expectant hum. Charles sat in the front row, right at the center. He wore a dark suit with a neatly adjusted tie, but his face couldn't hide his nervousness. Ever since he had learned that Ashley would perform a solo, his heart had not been at ease. He had been waiting for this moment, not only to see his daughter sing, but also to witness her break free from the fear of being silenced. Beside him, another parent leaned over to chat. "I heard your daughter has a beautiful voice. I'm really looking forward to it." Charles gave a polite smile, but his eyes stayed fixed on the stage. "She's only 6 years old. I just hope she has the courage tonight." Backstage, Ashley sat on a wooden chair, her small hands clutching Buddy tightly. "Miss?" Miller bent down, adjusting the bow in her hair, her voice encouraging. "You're about to go on stage, Ashley. Don't be afraid. Just sing like you do in class, and everyone will love you." Ashley nodded, but her hands still trembled. In her mind echoed Lisa's cold words from the night before. "If you dare to sing again, don't blame me for locking you in the dark room." Her heart pounded wildly, eyes filling with tears. She pressed Buddy to her chest and whispered, "Buddy, don't let me forget. I'm singing for Dad, no one else." The microphone squealed softly as Principal Collins stepped out. He was a man in his 50s, with neatly combed salt and pepper hair, walking slowly but steadily. He smiled kindly, his voice warm and resonant. "Good evening, parents and students. Tonight we will enjoy the special performances our children have prepared. And now, please welcome a first grader with a pure and emotional voice, Ashley Mendoza." Applause thundered. Behind the curtain, Ashley froze, her small feet feeling glued to the floor. "Miss," Miller bent down and whispered, "you can do it. Remember, your dad is right there." Ashley took a deep breath, then slowly walked out. The spotlight hit her, making her dizzy, her vision swimming. She bowed deeply, clutching Buddy in both hands. When she looked up, she saw her father. Charles sat in the front row, his eyes gentle, nodding slightly, his lips moving as if sending words of support. "I'm here, sweetheart." Ashley swallowed hard and whispered so softly only she could hear, "Dad, I'm singing for you." The music began. The intro floated out, and Ashley closed her eyes, then began to sing. That sound escaped, clear and trembling, like a stream flowing over stones. Each note struck the hearts of the listeners, and the buzzing hall fell silent. No more chairs scraping, no more whispers, only her voice echoing. Ashley slowly opened her eyes and saw her father watching her. He placed a hand over his chest, his eyes misty, as if sending all his strength to her. Receiving that gaze, Ashley sang louder, each word distinct and steady. When the song ended, a hush blanketed the room. Then the auditorium erupted. Applause thundered, students cheered, parents rose to their feet. Miss Miller wiped her tears, clapping non-stop. Charles couldn't hold back. Tears rolled down his cheeks. He stood, clapping hard, his heart aching yet full of pride. In that voice he saw Claire, his late wife, come alive again. He felt the sting of regret for letting Ashley suffer, but at the same time pride surged at seeing his daughter conquer her fear. In a corner of the hall, Lisa sat quietly. She hadn't planned to come, but curiosity and unease had brought her in. Now, hearing Ashley sing, her heart shook violently. Images from long ago flooded back. Little Lisa standing in the living room, clutching a bundle of sheet music, her eyes wet. "Dad, please let me compete in the singing contest. I want to be on stage." But her father shouted harshly, his voice cold as steel. "Singing is useless. Stop dreaming." Lisa collapsed, crying until she fainted, tearing her music sheets and burying the dream deep in her heart. Now Ashley was living that dream, on stage under the bright lights, amid roaring applause. Lisa saw herself in Ashley and felt her own bitter failure. She realized she had tried to crush that dream one more time. Tears blurred Lisa's eyes. She whispered to herself, voice choked, "That little girl. She's the dream I buried. And I tried to destroy it." Unable to bear another moment, Lisa sprang up. Her chair clattered loudly on the floor, making a few people turn, but she didn't care. She walked quickly out, her high heels striking sharply, blending with the wild applause still echoing inside. In the hallway, dim light filtered through the glass door. Lisa stopped, covering her face with both hands, her shoulders trembling. She burst into tears, her voice breaking into fragments. "What have I done?" Lisa left the auditorium that night, the hallway wind cutting through her hair like ice. She walked quickly, desperate to escape the applause still echoing behind her. Each clap felt like a needle in her mind, replaying the image of Ashley singing under the brilliant lights, a sight both beautiful and painful, stirring jealousy and regret at once. She leaned against the wall, her shoulders trembling, tears rising but held back. The next morning, the mansion lay in silence. Charles had taken Ashley to school early, then gone straight to the office. Lisa sat alone in the living room, sunlight filtering through the curtains onto her tired face. In front of her sat a cup of coffee gone cold, its steam long vanished. She reached out, touching the edge of the cup, startled by its chill. She sighed, her thoughts tangled like a knotted skein. The doorbell rang. Lisa stood up and went to open it. Standing before her was Victor, her distant cousin who had visited the mansion many times, offering advice that sounded reasonable but always hid schemes. He wore a gray shirt, his tie slightly askew, a thin smile on his lips. In his hand was a black leather briefcase. "Cousin, may I come in?" Victor tilted his head, his voice sweet, but his eyes cold. Lisa hesitated, then nodded. "Come in." Victor stepped inside and set the briefcase on the table. His eyes roamed the room like a scout. When he saw Lisa sit down, he pulled out the opposite chair and leaned slightly toward her. "You saw the girl sing last night, didn't you?" Lisa stayed silent. Victor continued, his voice slow. "See? I told you. If you let that girl take over Charles's heart, you'll lose everything." Lisa swallowed hard, her voice hoarse. "What do you want from me, Victor?" Victor smiled, opened the briefcase, and laid a thick stack of papers before her. The bold legal print hit Lisa's eyes like arrows. "These are transfer documents for part of the assets. All you need to do is sign and we'll take control. Don't soften up anymore. Holding power in this house is no joke. Don't let Charles turn his back on you." Lisa stared at the papers, her hands shaking. In her mind echoed Ashley's singing from the night before, and Charles's tearful eyes. Her chest felt tight, her voice quivered. "You're telling me to sign and throw that little girl out on the street? She's only 6. Victor leaned in, his voice hissing through his teeth like a snake sliding through the dark. "Don't look at her as an innocent child. She's the bridge between Charles and the past. Once she grows up, everything will be hers. And you'll be left out." Lisa closed her eyes. She remembered her own youth, when her father crushed her dreams of singing, calling her fanciful. Now Victor was speaking to her in the same tone. Part of her longed for power so she would never be belittled again. But another part trembled at the thought of Ashley, the child she had mistreated, now singing like she herself once had. Just then, the door opened. Charles had returned earlier than expected. He stepped into the hall and heard Victor's voice coming from the living room. He paused, frowning. Moving silently, he approached the door. The sight before him made his face darken. Victor sitting across from Lisa, the stack of papers on the table, Lisa's hands still trembling. "Victor!" Charles's voice rolled like thunder. Victor turned, startled for a moment, but quickly regaining his composure. "Charles, you're back. I was just discussing some matters with Lisa." Charles strode straight to the table, eyes fixed on the papers. He set his hand on the edge of the table, his voice ringing out cold. "You think I'll let someone like you touch this family?" Victor shrugged, his smile twisting. "I'm only helping your cousin. You're never home enough to understand what's going on." Ashley had just come back from school, dropped off by the car. She was about to run upstairs when she heard her father's tense voice. She froze, pressing herself behind the stair column, clutching Buddy tightly. Her little heart squeezed. She feared her family would shatter again like in her bad dreams. Charles looked straight at Lisa, his eyes full of anger and pain. "Lisa, what are you doing? I saw Ashley sing last night. Don't you realize she's just a child who needs love?" Lisa lowered her head, tears sliding down her cheeks. She was being pushed by Victor, questioned by Charles. She trembled, her hand still on the papers, like someone standing at a crossroads. Victor leaned back in his chair, his voice dropping to a whisper like a hypnotist. "Cousin, have you forgotten? Opportunity doesn't come twice. Sign it. Don't let that child steal your future." Charles turned to Victor, his words clipped and sharp. "You've crossed the line, Victor." Victor shrugged and gave a thin laugh. "I'm only telling the truth. She decides for herself. I'm not forcing her." Ashley held her breath behind the column, hugging Buddy so tightly her fingers turned white. She heard every word, her heart pounding, the question echoing in her mind. "Will Dad protect me?" Lisa looked at the two men, feeling as if the whole world was spinning around her. On one side was greed mixed with fear of losing everything. On the other was Ashley's singing from last night, like a thread pulling at her conscience. She trembled, tears streaming down her face. Victor leaned in close, whispering one last time into Lisa's ear, his voice sweet but venomous. "Choose, Lisa. Money or the girl." The room sank into a thick, heavy silence. Charles stood tall, his eyes blazing. Ashley hid behind the column, holding her breath. Lisa's hands trembled, her heart torn apart. A moment stretched on endlessly, just before every decision would be made. The living room fell into silence after Victor's whisper cut like a blade. The ticking of the clock was loud and clear in the heavy air. Lisa stood motionless by the table, the tendons on her fingers showing as she gripped the edge of the stack of papers. A few steps away, Charles stood tall, his gaze cold and sharp as a knife. On the staircase, Ashley hid behind the wooden banister, clutching Buddy tightly, her breath short and rapid, her eyes wide and unblinking. Victor tilted slightly, the sharp scent of cologne lingering around his collar. He blinked, his voice even but wrapped in metal. "Opportunities do not come twice. You know what you have to do, Lisa." Lisa began to tremble. Her shoulders sagged. Images rushed through her head like a storm. Last night's lights, the applause that rose when Ashley began to sing, Charles's tearful eyes in the front row, her own threats in the hallway days before. The cord stretched between greed and conscience snapped. She burst into tears, mascara running down her face. Her shaking hand grabbed the file, yanking hard, the dry rip of paper echoing. Sheet after sheet was torn apart, scattered across the tiles like broken butterfly wings. Her voice cracked, but each word was clear. "I was wrong. I will not let you use me anymore." Victor froze for half a beat, then smirked, his mouth curling with disdain. He reached out to grab the loose papers, but a firm arm blocked him. Charles shifted, placing himself between Lisa and Victor, his eyes never leaving the man. "You think I will let someone like you touch this family?" Charles said, low and firm, like an eviction order just signed. Victor shrugged, leaning back in the chair, trying to look calm. "I only guided her. And you are gone all the time. Who here fixes this mess for you? Get out." Charles did not raise his voice, but the sound was enough to make Ashley flinch behind the post. "Now." Victor gave a dry laugh, turning his gaze to Lisa, trying to hook one last barb. "Remember, miss this chance today and tomorrow you will have no share. Do not forget what you endured to reach this place." Lisa did not look up. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, inhaling as if escaping a suffocating dream. When she opened her eyes, her gaze no longer wavered. "Go, Victor. I do not need you." Charles stepped forward, blocking every escape. "That door, and do not come back." Victor rose slowly, picking up his leather briefcase. He glanced at Charles, then at Lisa, his smile twisted. "Fine. I'm leaving. But I promise, one day you will both call my name." He turned on his heel. His shoes struck the stone floor in rhythm. The door opened and closed, a light breeze stirring the curtains. In the room, the scent of cologne hung a moment longer, then faded. Ashley stepped out from the shadow of the staircase, tiny steps as if afraid to touch something fragile. She held Buddy against her chest, looking from her stepmother to her father. In her eyes, a streak of confusion had not yet dissolved, beside it a glimmer thin as a strand of hair. Charles bent to pick up the torn papers, gathering them into a neat pile. His hand paused on the edge of the table, stifling a sigh. He said nothing to Lisa yet, but the short turn of his head, the silent nod, was enough to show he had seen, had heard, and was waiting for what would come next. A cautious knock from the kitchen made all three look up. Elena peeked in, her brown eyes uncertain. She whispered as if afraid to break the fragile air. "Sir, ma'am. Mrs. Marta is in the yard, asking to speak for a moment." Charles did not answer, his eyes seeking Lisa. Lisa stiffened, her mouth dry. She nodded slowly. "Let her in." Marta came in, holding an old cloth bag. She stood at the threshold, her back slightly bent, avoiding Ashley's gaze. The woman who once sneered now spoke as if swallowing each word. "Mrs. Lisa, I am sorry. I was wrong. If you allow, I will stay to make it right. I will not touch the little girl again." Elena stood just behind Marta, exhaling softly. Ashley instinctively stepped half a pace closer to her father, her fingers gripping Buddy, nails pressing into the fabric. Lisa looked at Marta for a long time, as if at a mirror receding into the past. In her eyes flashed the image of herself weeks ago, the scolding words, the slammed doors, the small back of the child curled under the blanket. A long moment passed. When Lisa spoke, her voice was hoarse and flat, like a lake just stilled. "Number, this cannot go on. I do not want threats in this house anymore. Go, Marta." Marta opened her mouth, closed it, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. She bowed very low, then turned away. Elena quietly opened the door for her. The sound of it closing again was softer this time, but heavier. Silence returned to the three of them. Charles sat on the edge of the chair, his hand patting Ashley's back gently. He opened his mouth, then closed it, then spoke, slow and clear. "Enough trouble for today. Ashley, go up to your room and rest a while. I will make warm milk later." Ashley did not take her eyes off Lisa. Between them was a small gap, like a bridge not yet built. Lisa stepped back half a pace, then forward again, her hands clasped together, her thumb rubbing the smeared mascara. Finally, Lisa spoke. There were no commands left, no icy tone, only an effort to form words. "Ashley, listen to me. I was wrong. I have done many things I shouldn't have. If you could, just if, I want to start over. Can I make things right?" The room could hear the heartbeat of a child. Ashley swallowed hard, lowered her eyes, then lifted them again. She looked at her father, as if borrowing courage, then turned toward the woman standing there without makeup, without any disguise. Her voice was as thin as paper, yet unbroken. "I don't know." Lisa drew a deep breath, her shoulders trembling. That answer did not cut like a direct refusal, but it weighed like a suspended sentence. It said there would need to be time, actions, afternoons without shouting, evenings without wary eyes. Lisa nodded, accepting the bitter medicine she had prepared herself. Charles rose to his feet. He placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder, then looked at Lisa. For the first time that day, his gaze was not only judgment, still stern, but a crack of light opened at the end of the tunnel. He spoke slowly, laying down each step as though it were a stair. "Everything is only just beginning." Then he bent to pick up Buddy, the little bear that had fallen at Ashley's feet, brushed off a few specks of dust, and placed it back in her hands. Ashley hugged the bear again, her shoulders loosening a little. Lisa watched, the corners of her lips trembling, not quite forming a smile, no longer a hard line. Elena returned carrying a tray of warm milk and some cookies. She set the tray on the table, her eyes quietly observing the three of them, like someone witnessing a storm retreating offshore. "May I take the girl upstairs, sir?" Charles nodded. Ashley glanced at Lisa for a moment, then turned to follow Elena. Before leaving the carpet of the living room, she stopped and looked back. Her eyes did not yet speak anything big, but they were no longer only fear. Inside them lay an ellipsis, like a story promising to continue if tomorrow were different from today. The living room door closed partway. Charles stood facing Lisa. Between them there was no Victor, no stack of papers, only the things that needed to be done. Lisa wiped the smudged mascara from her face, her voice so small only the two of them could hear. "Thank you for standing in front of me when he was still here," Charles replied, neither praising nor consoling. "No one has the right to drag the girl into those schemes, and no one has the right to turn love into a weapon." Lisa nodded. "I understand." Outside the window, the slanting rays of late sun stretched across the carpet, forming a thin diagonal line. In that house, no one dared call it peace, but they no longer called it a battlefield as it had been that morning. Somewhere between those two shores, a bridge had just had its first stone laid. And on that stone, Charles's words lingered, like a marker to return to whenever someone wanted to give up. Everything is only just beginning. The morning after Victor had been driven out of the house, the atmosphere in the mansion was completely different. That spacious home no longer held the sound of cautious footsteps or furtive glances. The first light of day streamed through the windows, spilling across the wooden floor like a golden carpet. Charles woke up early, leaving behind the stack of files waiting at the office. He opened the refrigerator, took out milk, eggs, and bread. His movements were still clumsy, but his face was calm, as if he too was relearning a habit he had lost. Ashley came down the stairs holding Buddy as she did every day, her hair neatly tied on both sides. She froze for a moment when she saw her father in the kitchen. Before, the one who cooked was always the maid, and Charles barely had time to greet his daughter before rushing out. This time he turned and smiled. "I'm not good at cooking, but I want to learn for you. At least let me make this breakfast for the two of us." Ashley set Buddy on a chair and sat down shyly, her eyes blinking. Charles poured milk into a glass, carefully spread butter on the bread. He was awkward but patient, as if learning a lesson more important than any contract. He placed the plate of bread in front of his daughter. "Try it and see. Did I put too much honey? I read that kids like this flavor." Ashley bent down to take a small bite. The sweetness spread across her tongue. She looked up, and a fleeting smile crossed her face. Seeing that smile warmed Charles's heart. That simple moment felt like a small bridge connecting him to the little girl who had endured so much fear. That afternoon, Lisa appeared in the kitchen without heavy makeup. She wore a soft blouse, her hair tied back. She set a bag of flour and a carton of eggs on the table. Ashley looked at her, eyes wide, waiting to see what would happen. Lisa took a deep breath, her voice hoarse but striving to stay steady. "I don't know if you want to, but I'd like to bake with you. I learned a little long ago, but I haven't done it in years. Will you help me?" Ashley looked at her father, then back at Lisa, and gave a very small nod. Lisa reached out her hand, and the girl hesitantly placed her tiny hand on it. They began. Lisa cracked the eggs clumsily, shells falling into the bowl. She fumbled to pick them out, mixing the flour with trembling hands. Ashley watched her stepmother struggle, lips pressed together, then suddenly burst out laughing. It was the first laugh, clear as a drop of water breaking. "It's okay, Mom. Next time we'll try again." Lisa froze. That word "Mom" landed in her ears, strangely warm. She smiled softly, eyes glistening. "Yes, next time we'll try again." Charles stood at the doorway, quietly watching. He didn't interfere, letting the two of them find their rhythm. In that moment, the kitchen felt like a small stage, where all three were learning how to be together again. In the days that followed, Charles reorganized his work. He picked Ashley up and dropped her off at school every day. On the way, they talked about homework, about games at school, about Buddy. He started to get used to being in the kitchen at night, even though he often burned the soup or forgot to add salt. Each time it happened, Ashley giggled, her eyes shining brighter than the day before. Lisa was also learning how to be a mother again. She and Ashley planted small pots of greenery in the garden. Hands once used to holding makeup brushes now carefully turned the soil, placed each seed, and watered each sip of water. When Ashley told stories about school, Lisa sat and listened, without interrupting, without judging. Each story was like a tiny thread stitching together the tear between them. One late weekend afternoon, under the summer sun, Charles stayed in his study while Lisa and Ashley sat on the porch. She set out a tray of freshly baked cookies, some slightly burnt. Lisa gave a sheepish smile, her voice apologetic. "I burned them." Ashley picked one up, blew on it, then took a bite. She wrinkled her nose and burst out laughing. "It's okay, Mom. Next time we'll try again." That laughter lingered, dissolving the last bits of heavy air. Lisa looked at the girl smiling, and it felt as if a hand had gently squeezed her heart and then let go, leaving warmth behind. Another afternoon, Ashley took Buddy out to the garden. She set the teddy bear on the windowsill, drew in a deep breath, and began to sing softly. She no longer trembled, no longer feared. Her voice rose naturally like breathing. The melody floated through the air, touching the newly planted flowers. Lisa watched silently, her heart tightening. That sound seemed to fill the emptiness that had been there for so long. She remembered the night of the school performance, remembered how she had cried in the hallway. Now that voice rose right before her. No stage, no lights, only the two of them and a sky darkening with evening. Tears rolled down Lisa's cheeks. She whispered, as if speaking to herself, "This voice, it's truly the gift God sent me." Ashley didn't turn around, but her lips kept singing, her voice like a thin thread stretched across a deep gap, connecting her heart to the heart of the woman sitting beside her. Somewhere in the house, Charles listened as that song drifted in, his eyes serious yet warm, knowing that the healing had truly begun. On the morning of the Children's Music Festival, the city seemed to put on a new coat. Flags and banners lined every street, and crowds poured into the cultural center like a fair. On the square in front, broad stairs covered with a red carpet led up to towering glass doors. The golden letters, Children's Music Festival, Wings for Dreams, glittered in the sunlight. Backstage, Ashley sat with her knees drawn up on a long bench, Buddy lying beside her. Light streamed through a gap in the curtain, casting pale streaks across her face. She had practiced for weeks for today's song, yet the noise outside made her heart pound. She took a deep breath, her small hand playing with Buddy's ear as if seeking an anchor. In her mind flickered mornings when her father baked bread with his own hands, afternoons when her stepmother, covered in flour, planted trees with her, and the times she sang softly on the porch, no longer afraid. In the auditorium, Charles and Lisa were already seated in the front row. Charles wore a deep blue suit, no longer carrying the rushed air of a businessman but looking calmer. His hand clasped Lisa's tightly. Lisa wore a cream-colored dress today, no elaborate makeup, her hair neatly tied back, her face simple but her eyes bright and different. They sat in silence, but between their interlaced fingers there was a new peace. Beside them sat Principal Clara, a silver-haired woman, small in stature but with a clear, ringing voice, the main organizer of the festival. She turned, smiling at the two of them. Today that little girl will surprise everyone. She sings as if an entire sky lives inside her. Lisa swallowed softly, closing her eyes, feeling her heart beat against her ribs. Charles looked at the woman and gave Lisa's hand a reassuring squeeze. The microphone crackled. The MC, a young man in a light suit, stepped to the center of the stage, his voice brimming with excitement. Ladies and gentlemen, parents and children, let's give a big round of applause for our next special solo performance. A 6-year-old voice, pure as an angel, Ashley Mendoza. Applause erupted, rolling backstage like waves. Ashley stood up, Buddy placed into the care of Teacher Miller to watch over. Her small feet carried her out, the spotlight striking her eyes. She bowed, her heart hammering. Looking up, she saw her parents in the front row, hand in hand, eyes fixed on her. Ashley swallowed and whispered so softly only she and Buddy could hear, "Dad, Mom, I'm singing for you." The intro music began. She closed her eyes, drew in a breath, and sang. Her voice rose, clearer and fuller than ever. No longer trembling, each note fell like a cool drop of water into the listeners' hearts. The murmuring hall fell utterly silent. Fans stopped, cameras posed. No more whispers, only the song of a 6-year-old girl, thin yet resilient, like a ribbon tying back together her own wounds. Charles gripped Lisa's hand tighter, his eyes glistening. He leaned over, his deep, warm voice whispering in her ear. "We've been lost for so long. Now let's start again." Lisa nodded faintly, lips trembling. In her heart, layers of jealousy and shame seemed to dissolve under this man's hand and under the child's voice on stage. Ashley opened her eyes at the climax. The light shone straight on her, making them sparkle. She looked down at the front row, seeing her parents holding hands. A surge rose inside her, lifting her voice higher and clearer as if she wanted to give her whole heart to this moment. The song ended. A hush covered the hall, then applause burst forth like a summer downpour. Adults stood, children cheered. The MC wiped the corner of his eye. Principal Clara clapped without stopping, her face glowing with pride. Ashley bowed, her lips trembling. In that instant, she hesitated, then looked straight at Lisa. Her voice, small but carried far by the microphone. "Mom." The hall went still again. Lisa raised both hands to her mouth, tears spilling out. She broke into sobs, right there, her shoulders shaking. That single word cut through her armor like a blade and reached for her like a hand at the same time, tearing open the shell yet pulling her out of the pit. Charles turned to Lisa, his hand tightening, a promise unspoken. He tilted his head, his voice low and warm. "That little girl just gave us another chance. Let's not lose it again." Lisa nodded over and over, crying and smiling at once. Her eyes fixed on the stage where Ashley stood no longer afraid, only pure happiness left. She whispered through her tears, "My child, I'm here." The background music rose again. Ashley repeated the chorus, this time her voice brighter, soaring higher. Listeners grew misty-eyed, some wiping away tears, some holding their children's hands. In that voice, they heard hope. They heard a child forgiving and growing. They heard a reminder of simple, enduring love. Charles and Lisa sat still, hand in hand. In that moment, they were no longer two adults weighed down by schemes, but like two children learning how to love again. The lights shone down, making Ashley's eyes shine. Teacher Miller stood backstage holding Buddy, looking at her student with pride. Principal Clara raised the microphone, her voice choked, yet full of emotion. "This is why we hold this festival, to hear a voice that heals hearts." Ashley sang the last note, then bowed deeply. The applause rose like rain, unending. Lisa placed a hand on her chest, whispering through tears. "This voice, it truly is a miracle," Charles replied softly, his tone like a breeze. "And a reminder for us to begin again." Ashley lifted her head, the smile on her lips no longer timid but filled with confidence. There was no more darkness, no more fear, only the light of love and healing. She stepped down, hugged Buddy, and ran toward her parents. Charles opened his arms to welcome her. Lisa bent down, and for the first time the three of them shared the same embrace. The audience rose to their feet, the applause still thundering. The principal watched the scene, wiped away her tears, and softly said to the host, "A family once broken is now learning how to love again from the start." That is the true message of tonight. Outside the window of the cultural center, night had fallen. The street lights flickered on, spilling gold across the street. In that light, a small family walked hand in hand, their steps slow but steady, as if moving toward a new dawn. The story closes with the echo of applause still lingering, yet it opens onto the future. A family that once endured fracture now learning to love again from the beginning. On the bright stage, a little girl held Buddy in her arms, her eyes shining like the sunrise, while her voice continued to resonate in everyone's hearts. The story has come to an end, but its echoes will surely remain in each of us. A little girl who once lived in fear, who once pleaded with her stepmother in a trembling voice, "Please don't scold me anymore," was finally rescued by her father's timely return, exposing the truth and bringing light back to her childhood. The wrongdoer received the consequences, while the one with a kind heart finally found love again. This is proof that no matter how thick the darkness may be in this world, the light of truth and compassion will always prevail. Behind the story lies not only pain or injustice, but also a journey of healing. A father who once seemed to have lost his role stood up again to protect his daughter with all his strength. A stepmother who once harbored jealousy and selfishness eventually realized the value of love. And a small yet resilient child never stopped singing her own song until she received the warm embrace she truly deserved. This is also the message that Story for Heart always wishes to share through its heartwarming, moving stories. That wrongdoers cannot remain unpunished forever, and sooner or later will have to pay the price, while good people, no matter how much suffering they endure, will ultimately be rewarded with light, with love, and with a simple yet genuine happiness. And now, I want to hear your thoughts. You who have always accompanied Story for Heart. What do you think about the stepmother's change in this story? Do you believe that everyone deserves a chance to make amends and learn how to love? If it were you, would you be willing to forgive someone who had truly repented after hurting you? I also want to ask a little more. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone protected you, when someone reached out a hand to you at your weakest point? Did that moment change something inside you? Before we close, I hope you are safe and healthy. If you are going through a hard day, remember there is always light waiting for you at the end of the road. And I, along with Story for Heart, am always here to share with you the healing songs from the heart. Please share your feelings in the comments below. And don't forget to leave a like to help spread these heartwarming, moving stories to even more people.